Hello there, my friends. Welcome back one more time to the Vaults Remastered. Today we're continuing, I say, with our deep dive into 10 strategies that you can use as a game master, dungeon master, keeper, whatever you want to call yourself for your game, and how to use backstories from the player characters, those little mini novels, those novellas that they've written for you about their characters, and how to comb through those for some juicy details to increase the engagement of those players with your story. We're talking about number 3 today, strategy 3, and that is incorporating personal locations. So I got 10 strategies here. The third one is talking about the places that your characters are from or have significance in their lives. Hey, where am I getting all this information from all my characters? Am I just making this stuff up? No. No, no, no. I give all of my player characters a 18 question questionnaire when the campaign starts, session 0, all that planning stuff, or if a new player joins up later in the campaign. And I ask them all kinds of these personal questions for their characters, and I tell them, give me as much as you can, give me as much as you want, because the more you give me, the more I can pull out from there and use it to get you into this game world. This is not a generic campaign I'm running. This homebrew world, known as the Vaults, I am writing it for them. I'm running it for them. I'm just kind of there for the ride and enjoying the nonsense that they get themselves into. So, bang, we're talking about personal locations for their characters. And here we go. So, what are we doing? How are we doing this? What's he talking about? Explanations, methodology. We want to use meaningful settings, right? Things that are important to your characters and their histories as locations in your plot. Because maybe part of the reason why some of your players aren't engaged or don't seem as engaged is because they keep going to randomly generated village number 37 on the list for whatever quest, right? Or they go to the capital city of blah, 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 but none of them know the place, right? It's just whatever you describe. But if you can take stuff from them and their stories and use those locations, well, now you know where I'm going here. So, where you want to situate important events of your campaign in the locations that are tied to your character's history, places that'll be nostalgic for them, places that give them an opportunity to showcase their life history. Oh, hey, there's my family home over there up on the hill, or there's the village I was born in, or, hey, here's the cave that, my mother kobold gave birth to me and the other 15 kobold egg hatchlings or whatever, right? It gives them a sense of homecoming. You're back. Hey, look, it's I remember Lord of the Rings when all the little hobbits came back to the Shire and everybody's all excited. Woo, they're back, right? That whole homecoming sense. And then of course, character development, because your players, they want their characters developed. They want their characters to grow and get more powerful and cool stuff. So if you're able to take them places or send them places or have them visit places that are from their story, then that's gonna allow them to explore their roots and again showcase the things that were the origins of their character. So let's get into how we do this, what it means, how we're gonna apply it, all that fun stuff. Emotional places is our first stop here. So the settings that we're choosing have to be tied to your character's history. And when we do this, we want to use them to transform the environment from just a plain sort of, again, randomly generated village that you got from off the internet, let's say, and turn it into some place that's emotionally charged. Um, I don't want to, poop on RNG type of things out there, but I think that's too much of a reliance for a lot of GM DMs out there, right? You need a place. Oh my God, I got a session coming up. I need a village. I need a town. I need a city. I need a shop, whatever. And your immediate thing, you go on some internet site, right? You click RNG, give me a random place, name, whatever, right? And something spews out, but it has no relationship to anybody. Why not instead take the same amount of time and actually go through your players' backstories that they gave you and look for places, right? Locations that can be nostalgic for them, that can give them that sense of belonging, a sense of conflict. It makes it a more immersive, right? As you're telling that story. So rather than, RNG generated city on the hill, they're going back to character X's hometown or character accuse place where they were charged with murder and ran away or something, right? You got these cool places from their backstories that they're mentioning. Why not use one of those as a location instead? Now, character development. Of course, why are we using this technique? Because we want to give the players those opportunities to grow, right? To have their characters visit those places again, those places that will trigger some introspection. Like, the last time I was here, I was a wee level 1 sorcerer. Now look at me, right? I can split the planet in half. Or it might be some revelations. Wow, I thought this place was so big and so great when I was here, and now I realize it's just a crap hole, right? Uh, and then just places they can go where when they make decisions, now it's affecting people from their backstory. That can be much more punchy now because now the place and the people that are there are all tied to their backstory. So they're helping to drive directions for the characters and make that a more meaningful trip as well. Now, how do you do this? What are some practical things you need to consider as you're considering how do I use personal locations to engage my players more? Well, the first thing, of course, you need to know the information. So you got to gather this info. Collect info during or about these significant places for their player characters. And you do this, of course, during session 0 is a great time to do this. It's a collaborative effort, right? This is what we keep talking about, a shared story and collaboration and, all working together, kumbaya kind of stuff. Well, make it happen. Okay, you work with the players in that early part of the campaign. You're getting some new players and they're creating these characters, and you're using some sort of questionnaire like the one I'm using. It has 18 questions and it asks all sorts of pointed stuff and some more generic stuff, and I'm trying to get as much info as I can because somewhere in there they're going to tell me about where they were born, or some maybe crime they committed in some place that they had to escape from, or maybe they owe money to somebody. Some where does that person live, where does that person operate out of. Maybe that mausoleum that they're planning on a quest to go raid in another session, that actually turns out to be the burial site for their family, estate or something like that, and they don't know it till they get there. So if you start to get this information for your players, now you have locations you can start to seed in the game world, and you can also seed your game world with the locations that your players are suggesting. That's what I mean by the collaboration. So you're not just gonna throw a map on the table and go, "Yo, pick a dot," because that's where your character's from. All your players are probably coming in with a vision of their character, and if you ask them and get the information, they might say, "Yeah, I was a lumberjack from a wooded, mountainous area." Now you can go on your world map here and say, "Well, hey, I've got this country over here, this place over here, this forest. How about over here?" Yeah. Well, was it a village? Was it a town? Was it a big city? You get that back and forth with your player character, and now you can kind of create a town, a city, or whatever, a place, a location, and it's bang, and now it's on your map. So not only are you planning on deviously using this later, possibly against your player character, but the player character is seeing tangible results on your map, right? Hey, that's where I'm from. Boom, I can put a dot on the piece of paper. All right, other things you want to talk about or think about as you're implementing this, and I mentioned this in the other couple videos, is just seamless integration here. So now, once you have some of this information and you know where your characters might be from, or where they got in trouble, or where they're famous, all that stuff, you can start to plan key events, encounters, revelations, whatever it is that will take place not in some RNG, village, or some, find a random collection of locations in some book you bought or whatever, but it's actually tied to backstories. It's tied to the characters. It's tied to that collaboration from session 0. You can use that and you can plan it around there. And of course, the other thing that you want to consider as you're trying to seamlessly integrate this thing is that make sure that whatever places you're going, it's going to help advance the plot, of course, right? And not just the plot, but also explore the characters' backgrounds. So, I've mentioned this a couple times now in the other vids. Be selective, be purposeful, this has a point to the story. If you're going to go somewhere and it ties into a character's backstory, well, it would be really, really, really cool is if it also ties into the plot and moves the plot forward, moves the character forward. Now you've got momentum and everything is making sense, okay? So don't just use a character's location just because, whatever. I need a place. Johnny's Hamburger Shop is going to be the next location for where they're eating because that was on a character sheet. All right, let's keep going. Hey, let's talk about real world examples. Well, my real world, the Vaults game example. Saida, he's one of my player characters. I mentioned him last session here, my last video I put out about the NPCs in the game world. So Saida, he's one of these weavelings. He's one of these spider folk. And I have planned the plot is going to take the characters to his homeland. And as you see from the picture, his homeland is this spidery, dangling, architecturally wonderful, suspended, swinging cocoons, I guess. Although I think they're gonna be like stone. Maybe they like lift up stalagmites and they carve into them and they got stalactites. Anyway, it's a city. It's called Loomsway, or the non-weavelings would call it Loom Sway because you actually get, I don't say seasick, but you get motion sickness from the swaying. But the weavelings, it's Loomsway to them, although they don't say it in that tongue. They speak their own language. But this is Sidus' home, and he has skipped town, kind of running away from the place because his life there was supposed to be all, architecture school. And because, if you're a weavling and you're a builder, a weaver, that's like your job. That's what you're supposed to be doing, making wonderful, bridges and spans and all kinds of stuff in these caverns. So anyway, he ran away from that life. He wanted to have a more footloose and fancy-free type of lifestyle. Of course, this upset his family, who, from what I understand, was on the wealthier side, the more affluent, the more important people in this city. And I'm actually going to play this up even more. I've talked to the player a little bit. He gave me a little bit of information, but I'm at a point now where I feel pretty free that I can start manipulating things to my own desires. Hey, that's one thing. I'm sorry, players. If you don't give me like spell out exact details of some things, I'm gonna take creative license. I'm gonna take creative license anyway. But just FYI, GMs, right? We're taking your backstories, we're taking the information, and we have to be able to maneuver it and move things around. And hopefully, it's not something that is so dramatic or crazy that it gets you mad. And I usually run these by my players anyway. Hey, do you mind if I do something? I usually don't. I try not to spoil it for them, but I'll say, hey, I got a plan. Do you mind if I do that? And most players are cool. Yeah, yeah, go for it. So I think as long as you respect their initial creation, you can feel free to maneuver within that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to maneuver this family up in importance because I have an idea here. I have a concept. So he's going to be returning to his home, this Loomsway. And when he does so, of course, this is going to be a character building moment because we have some information from the backstory that things didn't go well there and he kind of ran away. And so, how's he going to be received when he comes back? How nervous is he going to be to go back? And what is the hook that's going to make him go back in the first place because he doesn't want to go? So, I've got to really sell him on this concept in the first place, his character, that is. Now, the setup is this, and I did get into this a little bit last video, so I'm picking up where I left off. So if you haven't seen last video, you need to put that in the playlist. I've got it in the playlist already, but it's the episode 2 of this thing, talking about using NPCs. And so some of the stuff I'm talking about here, I mentioned this last video. So Saida, he's this weaveling swashbuckler. Pathfinder 2E is the game we're playing, and swashbucklers are a thing there. And he hails from the city that's renowned for these intricate dangling web architecture, suspended from the ceiling of this deep vault known as Echo Spires. And despite his estrangement from this home, his connections, I think, are still strong as silk. You see what I did there, right? So there's going to be something that's going to pull him back in. So he didn't just cut ties completely. There's an emerging crisis. Life in Loomsway has been shattered by a series of mysterious disappearances and odd behavior of city leaders, which I think ties into his family, with rumors swirling about the involvement of the Harbingers of Freedom. Last episode, again, I mentioned Harbingers of Freedom as a cult that one of my other player characters, Nesney, has joined. And so there's some tension building in Loomsway between this new cult, the Harbingers of Freedom, which is worshiping Payenka, which is the wandering spider, this primordial arachnid entity, which naturally many weavelings also worship. But these Harbingers, they are, you know, touched by Payanka, and they're pretty powerful and convincing type of people who actually just helped to free Loomsway from some tyrannical oversight by a group of Choldrith. Well, the Choldrith. Know anything about Choldrith? They are from the Kitines, which is from D&D, and that is the origin of my Weavelings here. I haven't yet remastered the Choldrith, but the Choldrith are these, in my game world, they are touched by chaos, touched by not Payanka, but by another entity related to Payanka. I don't want to give too many spoilers in case any of my players are watching. But if you're trying to figure out what's he talking about, again, you got to go back and watch some of those old videos because I get into this with the cults of Ahriman here and the Harbingers of Freedom, and I talk about the secret of what's going on in that video. But anyway, there's something going on here in Loomsway that is being linked to the Harbingers of Freedom, and it's connected to the story that is currently happening for Saida and his team in the settlement of Gemheart, which is their current location. So they're going to start hearing, Saida specifically, from some childhood friend or something that comes and requests help, and they're going to say, hey, there's these weird things happening. And Side is going to recognize that it's very similar to what's going on that they're currently investigating. And I'm going to have some new clues that are coming up soon that are going to point in this direction as well. So, anyway, this creates a little bit of drama, a little bit of tension between two player characters, possibly. It starts to bring Saida out, and then Saida's going to take this journey. So here's his character development, but again, it has a plot connection. It's a destination where they're all going, and this destination has two connections actually. One, it's connected to Saida, obviously it's his home, but Loomsway is also connected to Nesni because this is the headquarters of her cult, where the Harbingers of Freedom, and they've already indicated to her that they want her to come here to be officially indoctrinated or initiated into the cult itself, because she's just level 1 at this point. So part of this process is going to take these two characters and have this interwoven, potentially, conflicting uh, arc is going to be heading in this direction. So this journey is going to take them there. The childhood friend's going to be side, I need you. I've come to find you. Something's going on back at the home. Your parents, your family, who's high up somehow in the hierarchy of the community. They're doing something. Maybe they're on the side of the Harbingers. Maybe they're against the Harbingers. Maybe they're been kidnapped. I mean, I haven't figured it out yet, but it's just the wheels are turning in my head as I start to think. And by the way, as a GM, you shouldn't have everything figured out, right? If you know your exact every single possible thing in your game, well, I guess you're a genius, but trust me, it's the players are going to do something that's going to break that anyway, so don't even bother. I have some loose ideas, right? I have some things, and I'm flexible. So depending on what happens in the next session or so, because this probably won't happen for probably about 2, 3 sessions, maybe, that they'll make it there, because they have some business to take care of in Gemheart first. But this is the next place I'm going, so I'm starting to plant the seeds now. So anyway, at some point in the near future, this childhood friend comes, decided we need your help, and by then I should have built up enough clues that hey, we need to go follow the breadcrumbs anyway, and this just gives them an extra excuse to go and compels Saida forward. So the homecoming, though, you can see where I'm gonna start to play with this now because there's gonna be a lot of emotion right here, right? The disdain from the family. Maybe this friend turns out to be a jealous friend who, maybe didn't willingly want to come and get Saida. Maybe there's some love interest in here. I mean, I don't know. I can play with this all I want, right? I do whatever I want. It's my game. I'm the GM. So anyway, I can start to use some of this backstory stuff and start to turn screws on these players again and turn up the heat, see what happens. So I have some of this information, and I'm going to start to turn up the heat on it and just see what happens with this character. Because the player whose character is, he's new to the game, he's new to the system. I think this is his first Pathfinder character, so he seems pretty open to some, some ideas. So I'm gonna see what we can push and get my man Lane into the side and see what he does with them. Lane, if you're watching, well, stop watching. But anyway, uh, I got some things in store for you, my friend. Anyway, boom, he's going home. Not going to be the greatest homecoming. That's going to be where the fun is. Now, that's kind of the example of my game. Hopefully, you get some of these takeaways then for what I'm talking here. So, if you start looking at the locations in your game world, the cities, the towns, the villages, even the dungeons or the little quest locations, not as just a location, but look at them through the lens of the characters' backstories, their history, the places that they're from, the places that they did things or things happened to them. And you can use them and to transform these locations into these platforms for engagement, emotional engagement, right? My conversation with Saida, the players Lane and Saida, is that his character doesn't want to really go back here. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you a reason to go back here. I am playing with that, right? Emotionally engaged because now his character's, I don't want to be here, but there's going to be a darn good reason to be there, right? So that's going to be my challenge. The other takeaway here is it's really important, of course, to, and this goes to probably any of the advice I'm given so far, it's just that player collaboration, right? Uh, you're choosing things for the game, for a session, for your world, based upon information given to you from the players. If you're working with your players, you don't have to do all the game world creation. You don't have to come up with every possible plot, angle or hook there is. The players gave you stuff. They gave you, typed up paragraphs or sentences or pages of information. There's stuff in there. Use it. The players are playing your game because they want their characters to do stuff. They're not playing your game because they want to see your awesome world. I mean, yeah, you hope they want to see your awesome world, but the world could be as awesome as it could be, but if the players aren't into it, they don't care. So, take your players with their stories, their character stories, and put them in the world that is so awesome and cool and make the awesome world cooler or more awesome because of it, if that makes any sense. Last takeaway for you. These locations, they should be more than just a scene, just a backdrop, as I said, right? They can become characters in and of themselves because now they've got history, right? They've got personality, they've got connections, they've got emotions, just like your characters do. And they have the power to influence now the game. And not just because it's a dangerous dungeon, but because it's the dungeon where your goblin character was conceived or something, right? I mean, think of the madness of that and how interesting that would be. Oh, I'm going back to my home. Yeah, that was the place where this other adventuring crew came through 10 years ago and slaughtered all of my tribe. But hey, I'm coming back because it's been overrun by kobolds, right? Where you want to reclaim the goblin dungeon. So you can have that as a fun little game you can play, little use of those players' story details and throw them into your game, make it a little more fun. All right, that's the end of the vid. Hopefully that was interesting takeaways for you, some useful information, give you some ideas of how to increase player engagement in the story using those backstories. There's lots of information in there. And I've got 7 more ways I'm going to tell you. That's how much information I think you can get out of these backstories. So, if you want to know more, hear more, check it out. Like the vid, of course, subscribe to the channel, notify yourself, all that fun stuff. You got any thoughts or ideas of your own, throw them down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. I'll reply as best I can, of course. And in the meantime, have yourselves a good evening. Take care, and I will catch you in the next video.